Washington Bureau Chief Jerry Seib. Jerry, thanks for joining us again.
Hey, Alan, happy to be here.
So let's start with these polls. Take a look at this average of the Real Clear Politics polls. Obama, 47%, Romney, 47.4%. They're going into this final stretch of the campaign about as close as they could possibly be, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an election worth having. It's going to be 3 weeks out, and here's where we are. But I have to say that if you step back and look 6 months ago, it's kind of where I think we all expected it to be, which is that an election under these circumstances, unemployment where it is, economic conditions where they are, and an incumbent president whose job approval never really got over 50% in the last couple of years, you expect him to have a hard time getting much higher than that, and that's what's happened. I think what the first debate did was it kind of brought the race into line with those expectations.
Yeah, Jerry, as you're talking, we're looking at a picture next to you of Frank Fahrenkopf and Mike McCurry of the Debate Commission who set the rules for tonight. I want to talk about those rules in a minute. But first, let's drill down a little bit on what each of the candidates needs to accomplish tonight and start with the president. What does he have to do?
Well, he has to do a couple of things, and unfortunately for him, they're a little bit contradictory. Everybody in his party wants him to get tougher, quote unquote, get tougher with Mitt Romney, to take him apart a little bit more, point out inconsistencies in his economic positions, bring up that 47% tape in which he talked about the people who don't pay taxes and who all consider themselves entitled to government benefits, and take him to town on those a little bit. I think he also has to, though, do a little bit of the vision thing. I think one of the things that was lacking in that first debate, in addition to maybe not picking apart the Mitt Romney proposals enough, was not talking enough about what the case is for a second term. How does your case for a more active government translate into economic growth and jobs for regular people, the kind of regular people who are going to be in the hall tonight? So that's what I think he has to do. I think Governor Romney has a relatively easier job. I think all he's got to do is keep the enthusiasm bump high among his own people, and that's what he created with that first debate. And as you suggested a second ago, Alan, be personable, be likable, because this is a town hall format. One of the problems for Governor Romney is that while he's done a lot of these, he sometimes comes across as a little stiff and a little distant from his audience. He doesn't want to appear that way tonight.
Jerry, you and I were talking about this earlier, but for Romney, the challenge is really coming down to the state of Ohio. We're going to have former Ohio Governor Ted Strickland with us a little bit later, but talk about what that electoral map looks like, because if he can't do better in Ohio, he's lagging a bit in most of the polls right now, it's very hard for him to win, isn't it?
It is. I mean, first of all, he's really got to win Florida. But let's assume he wins Florida. Then it would be enormously beneficial to him to win Ohio, because then he doesn't have to run the table on the other swing states. If he loses Florida or loses Ohio, the math becomes very difficult for him. And even if it's only Ohio, then he's got to start picking off some states that look like reaches for him, like Wisconsin, which is in play, but a tough one for him to win. The math just becomes more difficult. He's got to win, a combination of states like Iowa, New Hampshire, and Colorado, perhaps. President Obama's got an easier path to victory because there are more states that seem locked in for his blue Democrats, and they get him closer to the 270 electoral votes that he needs. We were also talking earlier, Alan, this is now a close enough race that you can construct scenarios, a couple of them actually, in which there's a tie in the Electoral College debate. And we all love to play those fantasies every 4 years.
Come on, Jerry, are you serious? You really think there's a possibility we'll see an Electoral College tie?
This is why they have those maps online where you can play around with the states and see if you can come up with one. I mean, my favorite scenario for a tie involves splitting the Electoral College votes of Nebraska and Maine, which pick their electoral votes not by state but by congressional district. So you can factor that one in too.
If you do have a tie in the Electoral College, then the election gets decided by the House of Representatives. That's a big plus for Mitt Romney, isn't it?
Right, one would think, and the Senate will pick a vice president, and that's a big plus for Joe Biden, I suppose. But look, I'm not predicting that. As I say, every 4 years, those of us who do this for a living spend at least some stretch in the fall playing around with these fantasy games. I think more likely we've got a very close election that looks a lot like 2004, when the incumbent president, George W. Bush, won barely, only on the backs of a few 100,000 votes in Ohio. We may be down to that kind of a decision.
Jerry, there was a big brouhaha today, or maybe a medium brouhaha today, over the debate rules and what the moderator, Candy Crowley of CNN, was allowed to do and not allowed to do. I want to read you from the rules that both parties agreed to with the Presidential Commission about this town hall debate. Here's what it says. It says the moderator will not ask follow-up questions or comment on either the questions asked by the audience or the answers of the candidates during the debate, or otherwise intervene in the debate, except to acknowledge the questions from the audience or enforce the time limits and invite candidate comments during the 2-minute response period. Man, if Candy Crowley sticks to those rules, that's an awfully limited role for the moderator.
It is, and I don't think she's going to. And I think the view of Candy and the debate commission is that's an agreement between the two campaigns. Those are the rules they agree to between themselves, not necessarily the rules the debate commission agreed to bind its moderator by. I think the reality is, and you saw this in the first debate in particular, Alan, that Jim Lehrer, as the moderator, tried to recede a little bit more than traditionally has been the case from the debate, to let the candidates speak and to speak to each other. I think that's probably going to be the attitude that all the moderators have this year, but that doesn't mean that Candy Crowley can't ask a follow-up question, at least in her interpretation of the rules. And I can virtually guarantee you that she's going to do that. So I think there's going to be a little bit of an unease over those rules all the way through tonight.
And no ramifications for breaking the rules?
You know, there never are. Let's face it, Alan. I mean, people break the rules all the time. When's the last time a candidate stopped when the light went red in front of them?
I'm glad I took the time to read them. Thank you very much, Jerry.